guys, it's Daniel here, back with a brand new TV review. And this one I've decided to do because I was curious to see this mini-series for a long time, as it stars one of my favourite actors that I've been talking about very frequently on this channel, Colman Domingo. I can't name like how many projects I've named on this channel of having Colman Domingo in it. I mean, have you seen how many things he's in nowadays? He's starting to become more like in like 5 projects a year. I think he's becoming like one of those actors like Jon Bernthal and Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Pedro Pascal. Ha, get it? I didn't say anything of a Walking Dead actor. But like, not in like the lead role constantly like Pedro Pascal, but it's just like in that category of actors that's getting constantly used in film. But you know, what separates Colman and Pedro is that Colman definitely, while his name is in the lineup of main cast, he more is like known for playing supporting characters rather than being the lead, whereas with Pedro Pascal is usually like the lead or one of them. So that's that kind of stuff. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What is the little mini-series starring Colman that I'm reviewing today? Well, it's a thriller mystery mini-series known as The Madness. So The Madness follows a man named Muncie Daniels, who is a part-time TV host on the news channel and has jobs now and again, who is frequently seeing his family whenever he can, but he's moving out into the woods, into this cabin for a while, and meets his neighbour. However, when Muncie comes around to ask the neighbour for help, he comes into like this sauna to find the neighbour murdered. So he witnesses a crime scene, but not only that, 2 assassins notice Muncie at the site and try to shoot him, causing Muncie to have to run away to get to the cops. He tries to tell the cops about what's happened, but the cops don't seem to believe him, and they start suspecting that Muncie, being at the scene, might be responsible for this death. So, Muncie is now on a determined mission to find out who is the one responsible for these murders, who is these assassins, and can he stop them from killing anybody else. And he has his family by his side, and he has a friend named Lucy, who is connected with the victim that was murdered in all of this. And from here, the madness begins. I was very interested to see The Madness. I mean, it has been out for over a year now, since the ending of 2024, so I didn't get a chance to see it, but I thought, oh man, I really should see it. I mean, this is a Colman Domingo-led series. But, you know, other than the fact that Colman Domingo stars in it, it still looked very interesting, and it's like one of those, like, you witness something terrible, but you get blamed for it, so you're trying to clear your name. It has been done many times before, but this might be a very interesting way of taking it. So, recently, I finally watched all 8 episodes of The Madness, and what do I think of it? Well, let's get into it. Hands down, the best thing about this miniseries, without a doubt, were the performances, especially Colman Domingo's, as he knocked it right out of the park with the character of Muncie. And it really like tackles like, he's not the most perfect human being, but he is like a good human being just trying to do right for his son, do right for his career, but also wanting to find out who is the one responsible for killing his neighbour in the woods by the cabin. And for me, it made me really sympathise with his character, because you know that he's not responsible for this. He has evidence, or at least tries to find good evidence, that he's not responsible for this. But nobody believes him, even though he has all of this evidence against him revealing that he's not the one responsible for this. And you just feel his desperation throughout the show, as it not only affects himself, but it affects his family too, because these murderers might have seen who he is, so he might be putting his family in danger, and he also wants the whole family to believe that he knows what he's doing, and he knows that he was innocent. And just the smugness of the law constantly like berating this guy, saying, oh, you're just a murderer, even though we know he's not the one who did it. So just the constant pressure of society looking down on this poor soul who didn't have anything to do with this. And I love his determination and confidence, because he'll do anything he can to get answers. And Colman performed his scenes very well. And honestly, just, you know, it made his character very sympathetic, and you can tell he's a nice guy deep down. He might have a few problems, he might have a few ways of dealing with things that might be questionable, but behind that persona is a heart that will do anything to protect his son and his ex-wife. Although I don't think they said if they were divorced or not, but I believe that they were split up or something. But I really bought his performance. I can't wait to see more Colman roles in television, and maybe see him get another lead role, because honestly, besides this, I don't think I've seen Colman in like a main lead role since Sing Sing, which you all know how I felt about Sing Sing. I thought that was fantastic. His family was also interesting. I really liked his son. I thought his son was very sympathetic. I like that he does try to add in his own little bravery and determination for his dad's mission. And come think of it, for some reason, Muncie and his son was kind of like the Walton Walt Jr. of the show. I don't know why, it just kind of reminded me of that bond. I thought his wife was very interesting. I did feel like she was a little bit too aggravating sometimes, but she still like puts in her own. I mean, there's some moments where she has to like stand up against like one of the main villains, and I was like, that is a wife and mother that will do anything to protect her family. I also kind of like the character of Lucy. I mean, come think of it, I will address like a problem I have, but she was very interesting, and I like that she did have her own kind of role to do for the time that she did it. We'll get to that soon. I really have to admire the cinematography and style for this show. It has like that kind of like digital camera kind of feel to it, but it also uses like different like landscape shots, tracking shots, and dark lit shots to capture the uneasy feel of what Muncie is going through and the many troubles and tribulations that he gets up to, as well as like any moment where he's kind of like, you know, having his little style, having his little like moments where he's running around, like when he's like doing his exercises, which very interesting because, you know, I've got a smartwatch now and I keep track of my steps, so I was like, ooh, he does a little bit of soft jogging too. I mean, also, can I just talk about like how in the opening, when we see Muncie in his like suit when he goes on the news, that looks just like season 1 Strand, but just with a longer beard. I don't. Does anyone else kind of agree? Like, yeah, I don't know. I just really liked it. There's also some very interesting action sequences. I love the way that the characters like have these fights, have these car chases, and the whole mystery was very interesting, and it led to a few twists, turns, and reveals that were very cool to watch and kept us on the edge of our seat, wondering what we're going to see next. And the many moments where the characters are having to fight off each other. I mean, Muncie himself, like, we see him how he trains himself at the beginning of the series, how he does, like, his own grappling class, and he does know how to fight. He does handle himself, and it makes him even more interesting and determined as a protagonist. The score also was very, like, well constructed. I like the kind of, like, jazzy music that they use for any times we see, like, suburbia and we see the city. As well as, like, the very, like, dark and creepy kind of, like, or, like, little orchestral pieces when we have to see a moment of intenseness. However, I think one of the major aspects of this series that I really loved and I felt like they did a fantastic job portraying is how they handle the kind of existential themes of this show whenever Muncie is in the middle of it all. I mean, we see how the family is responding to the situation and him like doing anything he can to convince them that he will protect them. And I like the kind of like dysfunction of like, even though the two parents are split up, they still kind of have that still love for each other and reminiscent of the past. I love the way that they did that and the bond with Muncie and his son. I also really liked how it gave a pretty interesting take and realistic feel of how the law, as soon as they see like Muncie involved in like the spotting of the crime, they automatically are suspicious of them. Why? Well, it's that moment of like with these law not being able to realize Black Lives Matter, because the law definitely, we can tell, have a state of racism, but also the civilians that like Muncie comes across who are acting very rude and like trying to set him up to look like a bad guy. It's another like devastating and like angry kind of portrayal of how racism is still present in these kinds of times, and it's really like frustrating to watch, but the writing makes it like we are so frustrated that we root for Muncie's freedom and privacy, and we just want to see him prove these a-holes wrong. And it's a very important like lesson of how no matter what skin colour they are, they're still as human as each other, and we shouldn't like treat them differently, and how we shouldn't automatically look at them as like a warning sign. No, it all involves in the communication and like trust. I love the way that the series tries to promote that kind of like moment by getting us like so involved in Muncie's story that we want to see him make it out okay, but also we want to see these protesters and law just a-holes be proven wrong and have their theories been spat back in their faces. And I like that the show really likes to write that as a big motivation of how we can get involved in the story. Now, I will admit, while I do really like this series, I do have a couple problems with it. I do feel like that sometimes the pacing can get a little bit too slow now and again. There are moments where not too much is happening, and I feel like that we are kind of stuck in like some places for a bit too long, and it does kind of make the series, like, not the series, but like an episode or two kind of feel like a bit of a drag and a bit slow. But I do appreciate that that is like to give us the sense of the story, so I can kind of give it a pass, but again, sometimes I feel like that the timing was a bit slow at some points. I also couldn't really get the mind out of the fact that sometimes characters that I felt like could have been important characters in the story do kind of get a bit sidelined. Like, as much as I do like the character of Lucy, I will admit, one, yeah, she can be a bit judgmental now and again, and we do see that she does have a backstory where the characters do feel like she might have acted a little bit judgmental, which, honestly, if she has her own motivations for that, I can totally understand, as well as, like, her bond with her kids. I really like watching that. She is trying her best to be a good mother and teach them good law and teach them good morals. I really appreciate that. That kind of made her come off as a mother of the century. The problem is that many moments I felt like she was pretty underused. I felt like that you could have involved her more in the story, especially because she has connection with the victim of this crime. But besides like the middle portion of the show, where she does kind of get herself involved in the story, I think in like the last 2 episodes, she kind of got like, okay, she had her moment to shine, but now let's kind of get her out of the story for a bit, and let's give her like minimal screen time the last 2 episodes. I felt like that this character was very underused, and you could have used her more to the show's advantage to give us like an interesting and more detailed pairing between her and Muncie as they both try to figure out what's going on. I mean, that's what they were kind of doing to begin with, but later on I felt like that they kind of brushed that kind of dynamic aside. One last problem I will admit I did kind of have a little bit of a problem with is that I enjoyed the final episode, but it is one of those occasions where you felt like you reached the climax of the series. Like, oh my god, this is very intense. What are we gonna do? Oh, the climax is finished. Oh, very interesting. But then they're like, oh, we got another major twist to this, there's more to the story, and it kind of like brings the finale kind of to a bit of a halt, as I felt like there are moments in the finale that in my opinion should have been earlier in the series, and the whole final episode should have been like the climax of this story, and it kind of like ends in a way where you feel like, okay, the conflict is over, it's all over, but then they kind of do that kind of thing where they just can't wrap everything up, and they have to like kind of leave leaning ideas that something is still prevalent as a threat to the characters in the finale. And for me, I felt like it was kind of a problem that some miniseries do, because remember, this is a miniseries. They promoted it as such, and that's what they're trying to do, and they announced there's no season 2. When you leave things a little bit like, oh, there's something more, not everything is resolved because the characters are still feeling these uneasy feelings. I'm all for ambiguous endings and like leaving things like everything's not going to work well and not all your fears are going to go away. But the way they handled it was a little bit confusing, and for me it reminded me of like the ending of Defending Jacob, where they kind of just, the finale just like brings everything to a halt to introduce a new storyline that is connected to the storyline they're already facing, and then by the end we either get a rushed answer or not a clear answer. Like, sometimes I don't like it when miniseries do that, from what I've seen. I felt like, why can't your final episode just like have a proper ending? When you leave things hanging, of course some fans are going to be wanting more. In my opinion, the miniseries should be like, if it's just one contained story, it should be like definitive ending. Like Ones Who Live, Walking Dead, though it did have kind of a crap ending to its conflict, at least in terms of like the story of those 6 episodes, it ended. So I don't know what they were trying to do here, but maybe I'm missing something. Maybe if I watch the series again, I'll understand more. Again, this is just my personal opinion. But overall, guys, despite those few problems, it didn't take away from the fact that I overall thoroughly had an absolute blast watching the madness. I was definitely engaged, mostly from beginning to end. Sure, there are a few slow things now and again, but overall I was captivated in the story. I love all of the performances, and I was constantly on the edge of my seat. It had many great reveals, many great action sequences, many moments where you fear for the characters, and of course, the big Colman man himself gave a wonderful, charming, and awesome performance as usual. And honestly, I can't wait to see more of him, and I thoroughly enjoyed this series, and if you haven't seen it yet, I know this review is random, but hey, I always make random reviews. I just talk about what I usually like to talk about, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really had a blast with it, and honestly, maybe in a while I might watch it again, but I don't know. But overall, I really enjoyed the madness, and I'm going to give it a 4.25 star out of 5, which I believe is like an 8.5 out of 10. It's great, and if you haven't seen it yet and you love Colman Domingo, go and see the madness. I think that was my poor Colman Domingo impression. But anyway, guys, what do you think of this series? Do you love it? Do you hate it? And what is your favourite Colman Domingo role? Let me know in the comment section below. Anyway, more videos to come, and I'm Daniel, reviewing movies, TV shows, and doing videos. Carefully ending this review with no madness, known as the Filming Daniel. Till then, peace out, man! The baby, Howard. Bring me the baby. I want to spend time with her. Sorry, again, poor Colman Domingo impression, but that was kind of me referencing his like iconic like weird performance as Strand in that season 7 episode when he's telling Howard to bring him the baby. Anyway, bye.